Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining us today and this very important webinar. I'd like to introduce and welcome um, our chairman and the panelists that are with us today. We've got Richard Jessup, the sales director. Sorry, oh my goodness, I do apologize. We've got Adam Mansell and from the UKFT and Simon Courtney. I'm sorry, I was reading yesterday, so I do apologize. Um, for joining us on the UK Marketing PPE webinar. Um, so, without further ado, let me introduce to you our chairman, who would like to tell you a little bit more about PCIW and our aim for the industry. John Mill.
Thank you, Yvette, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the PCIW, I'd like to welcome you to our very first webinar week, which we hope will be the first of many to come. During this week, we've been engaging with industry after a difficult year in order to get the focus back on track and to pick up from where we left off in dealing with the challenges the industry faces. Today, our topic is the UKCA Marking of PPE. The pandemic has changed the United Kingdom as we know it, and it is clear that Brexit will change the United Kingdom as we know it as well. From the 1st of January 2021, the UK is expected to adopt its own legislation, including the use of a new UKCA mark for the first time in decades. Our panellists today, Simon Courtney of SATRA and Adam Mansell of UKFT, are here to explain what this means to the industry and discuss and inform how it will affect UK businesses and their international trading partners. Our intention is that they equip the attendees with the knowledge to prepare for these upcoming changes. We're also extremely grateful to Simon and SATRA for the support today in partnering with us on this important topic. So in welcoming Simon and Adam today, I should on your behalf like to thank them both for their knowledge, expertise, and indeed for giving us their time today, both to present and answer some of your questions on the very relevant topic of UKCA marking. We will ensure that all questions will be answered, particularly those not covered today because of time constraints. Having had very informative webinars this week already on sustainability and PPE, a crisis or an opportunity, our final webinar on manufacturing and sourcing takes place tomorrow afternoon. We very much hope that you find the topics we've established to be of value to you, and that we look forward to your joining tomorrow afternoon as your time and interest allows. The professional clothing industry worldwide is the only sector-specific trade body devoted to the multifaceted professional clothing industry and help our members discover new opportunities for their businesses by putting buyers in touch with suppliers for workwear, corporate wear, and PPE. As a not-for-profit organisation, we place our members at the forefront of our work. We are run by our members for the benefit of the members. We are thus a knowledge bank, a meeting place, a network, and a voice to government. We bring together organisations, experts, and individuals from across the industry to create a platform through which we provide business opportunities, professional guidance, and strategic support for those who are part of our thriving trade, helping our members grow their businesses and extend their reach. We also publish online the PCIW Voice magazine dedicated to the industry. And we also celebrate the industry by organising the annual PCIW Awards event, and alongside this run a summit of relevant topics for learning, debate and discussion. Sadly, we were not able to hold it this year due to the pandemic, but are intending to hold it next June 2021, when we very much hope it can be run in accordance with government guidelines in force at that time. Please look for updates on our website at www.pciw.org. And finally, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us all this afternoon. If you have any feedback, we'd be delighted to hear from you, either directly to Yvette and her team or through info@pciw.org. Back to you, Yvette.
Thank you very much, John. We've had a brilliant week so far with all the different webinars. All the videos and the tapings are available. If anyone wants to listen to them, please let us know. I'm delighted this afternoon to introduce Simon Courtney, Divisional Manager and Consumer Products from SATRA. Simon, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
First slide, please, Jeff. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about the United Kingdom Conformity Assessed Mark, the UKCA Mark, and really look at its implications on the supply chain. Next slide, please. So this is the image of the marking, that which we will we'll get to become familiar with during this presentation, and this is the conformity assessment mark that will replace the CE mark, and today we're considering its impact on the PPE industry, and this will replace the CE mark in Great Britain, and you'll notice that I said slightly different to the United Kingdom there, and I'll come back to that a little later. Next slide, please. Okay, so the United Kingdom conformity mark has been brought into existence because of the UK's vote to leave the EU through Brexit, and it is established into law through a piece of legislation which is a mirror of the PPE regulation. So this is really good because it means that everything that a manufacturer and supplier is familiar with will continue. So you're familiar with the CE marking regulation, this is exactly the same. Now I say it's exactly the same, and that's true of day one of its existence. Nobody can really promise how the systems will become different, will diverge over time, and I imagine that in 5 years' time we might see a slightly different beast, but we'll have to see what the future brings. So this mark is relevant to Great Britain, and it will be awarded by UK organisations or UK notified bodies. Now I'm going to use the change of terminology there because the new the UKCA mark introduces what's called an approved body. Essentially, that's the UK's equivalent of the notified body, but there gives us differentiation between the two. And each notified body will have its own reference number, and I've put SATRA's reference number on the screen there. So we've got AB for the approved body and the 0321 for SATRA. And anybody who would be familiar with SATRA will notice that actually is very similar to what would have been our reference number under the CE system. We would have been 0321. We now become AB 0321. So we have received information to say that all the notified bodies who are already certified will now become, in the UK, will now become approved bodies, and then they're able to begin their work in January. Alongside this, we can confirm that BSI will continue to be a member of the SEN community. So what that means is anybody throughout the UK who is already working on the standards committees throughout Europe will continue to do that work. So I myself am the UK chairman for the Protective Glove Committee. I'm also involved at a European level and a convener at a European level for protective clothing. So my role continues in that capacity. And again, it's a change in terminology. So the PPE regulation and the CE system refers to harmonised standards. So those are those standards that have been agreed that meet the requirements of the health and safety requirements of the regulation. And the UK will create its own list of standards, which will be called designated standards. But essentially, from day one, again, these will mirror the harmonised standards. But again, I will say we don't know how they will diverge over time. All the supporting systems will be mirrored, and we're yet to see these put into place, but there will be support systems information online in the same way that it is provided for the EU, and vertical and horizontal groups again will be mirrored. And I guess it's worth just noting that that the language of the regulation, the piece of legislation, is exactly the same. So all the words are the same. However, we do need to remark that you might have a change in position in your supply chain, because the UK, Great Britain will be outside of the EU, so it might be that where you were before a distributor, you might now be classed as an importer. Next slide, please. So in the same way that the PPE regulation for CE mark requires mandatory third-party conformity assessment for categories 1 and 2, this continues. So it's exactly the same system, and it will also have the same type of conformity assessment. So you will be familiar with the Module B certificate, which allows you to put the product on the market, and then the C2 and the D modules, which are for the ongoing conformity. All the language there remains the same. So a product that's been sold can carry both the CE mark and the UKCA mark. So they can sit side by side on the product, as long as they are fully compliant with both systems and have been certified to both systems. So while we're saying they're a mirror, the products still need to go through the certification for the new UKCA mark. The UKCA mark will not be recognised in the EU, and products which have been CE marked will not be able to be placed on the market in the UK past a certain date. To help support the implementation of this, there is certain definitions which help clarify what can and cannot be done. And there's an interesting definition of being placed on the market. So product can continue to be sold within the UK if it has a CE mark past the end date of which the CE mark is relevant, and that is relevant for when products are newly placed on the market. If a product is on shelves, ready for sale, in warehouses, ready to go, that product can continue to be sold past the end dates, which we'll talk about in a moment. There is no end date of when this instruction it comes to an end. So we imagine in the longest case, products would continue to be able to be sold until the end of that life of that certificate. But I quite imagine that in 2 or 3 years' time, there might be more of an interest to shift those products, and any surveillance agency might have an interest in moving that along. Next slide, please. So the timeline. We haven't got very long to implement this, and I think that is one of the biggest challenges with the whole of the system. We are fairly confident that this will become implemented on January the 1st, and we're working to that. But the latest set of government guidelines that we've been working to were really only published about 6 or 8 weeks ago. So organisations like SATRA are working very, very hard to implement our service, and also to communicate, like today, with all the people that and all the organisations that this is applicable to. And really, there's a lot of work to be done in a short space of time. So the end of the Brexit transition period is the 31st of December of this year. So within a few weeks, just over a month's time, the end of that transition period comes, and which starts a new period called the standstill period. So at the end of the period at the end of 31st of December, all CE certificates which have been issued by a UK notified body will expire. So it is no longer possible to put CE marked products from a UK notified body onto the market. Now, don't sort of panic about this straight away, because many organisations have been working with notified bodies, UK notified bodies who've been setting up in Europe. So ourselves, we've got an office in Dublin, but our colleagues in other notified bodies in the UK have done similar things in other countries. So they have already been transferring much of their certificates to their European arm. So in most cases, you will have a certificate through the European arm of that organisation, and then that gives you continuity past this date. It is worth just checking to make sure that has been done, because I know that even in the last few weeks, we've had customers who are realising that actually, while the information has been out there in the environment for good many months now, it's only really the dawning realisation that this is happening now. So the standstill period allows 1 year of which both the CE mark and the UKCA mark apply. So a product being placed onto the market can have either certification marking, but at the end of 2021, as we entered into 2022, only UKCA mark products can be placed on the GB market. From the first day of 2021 to the last day of 2022, there is a softened or relaxed rule to allow a fixed or attached certification information. So it could be a label in the box, it could be some labels on the box, which identify if the product has been UKCA marked. So this gives a little bit longer lead time for you to change labeling, box information, and potentially even molds for certain types of products. So it gives a little bit more leeway on that. But from the 1st of January 2023, products must be correctly labelled in the way that the legislation describes. Next slide, please. Now, I said I'd come back to this. There is, in the latest round of information that was supplied, the guidance gave differentiation between Great Britain, which excludes Northern Ireland, and the UK. And the information gave is very thin at the moment, and we don't have a lot to work on, but it suggests that, or it indicates that the Northern Ireland will not abide by the UKCA mark, but will continue to accept the CE mark. But there will be the introduction of a UK Northern Ireland mark. So the Northern Ireland mark will allow sale into that territory. Not all products will need that, because it really will only come into force if you're selling one product or a type of product into Northern Ireland. Because between the UKCA mark and the CE mark, if you were to dual mark with both of those, you'd be able to sell through Great Britain and through Europe, including Northern Ireland. So you won't need to have all three marks, but just the two. As I said, there's very little information about this at the moment, and we're still waiting to have some more given to us about that. Next slide, please. So I'll talk about SATRA, but please take some of this sort of this information as being true of other notified bodies in the UK. I don't want to sort of completely satrify the conversation, but as SATRA has opened an office in Dublin, we now have two entities, as many of our colleagues in other organisations do as well. So we are a notified body through Europe, and our number is 2777. And that's where we offer our CE marking. And our office in the UK is now, or will be, an approved body. So has the code AB0321, and that will offer the UKCA mark. Our laboratories are independent of either certification system, and that'll be true of everybody's laboratories as well. When we look to the CE marking and whether we accept reports or test results from an organisation, we're very much looking at their accreditation, and our accreditation, like many other organisations or good organisations, is to ISO 17025, which is the standard for laboratories. And this gives us a quality scheme to work through. It gives us instruction of how to operate. So as we gain that accreditation, those reports can be accepted or continue to be accepted in Europe and in the UK and throughout where they already currently accepted. So, and I think this has been where I've noticed a little bit of misunderstanding in Europe, is where organisations have felt that because the UK has gone through Brexit, then any results generated in the UK can no longer be used against CE marking in Europe, and that is not true. Reports are accepted from all over the world as long as there's a guarantee of the quality. Next slide, please.
So can I just ask you, Simon, before you go on? So when people bring in, because this question was put to me several times, when people bring in things into the UK, they have to have a CE marking, and when they're sending things out of the UK, or I'm not fully understanding how that works.
So if somebody is selling a product or placing a product on the market into Europe, they will need the CE mark. If they are putting a product on the market in the UK, it'll be the UKCA mark. Right. So if a product has both, then it can be sold in both territories.
Okay, so your office that you've opened, will they be able to supply certificate from Ireland for Europe as well? Is that what you'll be able to do?
Yes. So that's the reason we opened an office in Ireland, and other organisations chose other European countries.
Right.
And because we're based in Ireland, we are set up as SATRA Europe, which is a European entity. So being a separate organisation, we are fully accredited to the PPE regulation and the CE mark. So
I think what I wanted to let people understand is that they don't have to go to a completely new supplier. You can work exactly.
No, absolutely right. And almost all of the UK notified bodies would have worked hard in the last few years to set up a service where they can continue their work. They would have known, as we did, that the end of this year prevents us from issuing the CE mark from a UK base, and they would have set up these organisations. So most of this work has been transferred. That's transferred through. So ourselves, we have not issued. In fact, I can't recall the last time we issued a certificate out of the UK, because all of our work would have come out of Ireland, because it means it then continues to be accepted past the end of this year.
Okay, thank you.
So what I've tried to do is think about the implications of this on the different sort of areas of the supply chain, with sort of clothing and apparel in mind. And I think it has different implications at each sort of stage. And I've tried to sort of create a category really, and really understand how that might impact. So thinking about a manufacturer of a component or a fabric, and what impact does that have? So I guess the first thing is really important for everybody in the supply chain is to be aware of the UKCA mark, understand the extent of its coverage, and understand those milestone dates, what happens when. Now, most of the organisations who would be categorised in this group would not be getting certificates themselves. You cannot certify a component or a piece of fabric. You only certify the end garment. So if somebody is supplying the high visibility fabric or the retroflective materials on a high-vis jacket, while they're very interested in those standards and work to those standards, that organisation themselves won't do the CE marking process. It'll be the person that creates those into products and puts the product on the market. So their involvement is very much around providing providing test reports that have been tested to certain standards that allow the person further down the chain to put the product on the market. So they need to be aware of this, but there probably isn't an awful lot of action they need to do. They need to make sure their test reports are current, and they need to make sure the test reports are still valid and accepted. And they probably need to think if there's new standards. So many of their customers will need to recertify products, and the legislation uses reference to something, to a phrase called the state of the art. So what this means is that when an organisation like SATRA does the certification, they have to consider the latest version of the standards or the harmonised version of the standards. So if you have provided test reports that your customers use further down the supply chain, they might look for you to be providing the latest version of the standards, latest versions that have been published. So that's something to look into. And the customers will need, of your customers, will need to be doing the certification at some point next year. So between January and the end of December next year. So prompt action is needed because they're going to want to get in the queue. And I think there's going to be a long queue because there are, SATRA, many organisations are trying to build as much resources as we can, but there's going to be a lot of people asking for certificates. And hence there's going to be a lot of work to be done. And I guess communicate your plan with the customers. Let them know if you are needing to update any reports. I think communication is key through this process. Next slide, please. So the implications on the garment manufacturer are probably the largest, or definitely significant, because they will probably be the organisation which is the owner of the certificate that has been the CE certificate, and they will need to acquire the UKCA mark certificate. So these people have probably got the most to do. So they need to plan and define what products need to be transferred. It is a good time to rationalise, if only transfer what needs to be transferred, and really plan that in with the notified body. Again, we must consider the state of the art. So if a CE mark has been issued 2 years ago, but that a new standard has been published in the last 2 years, then that new standard will need to be used as part of the certification process. So we need to understand what tests you need to do, and your notified body will be able to help you with that. You will need to undertake the certification. So you will need to create a technical file. But as the system is a complete mirror of the CE mark system, you can use the basis of your existing technical file and make a few changes. So it's the references to the legislation, the references to the territories and the most important things, and then you'll be able to use that. So by no means do you have to start this work again. You will need to review your user information and labelling, and you will need to create a new declaration of conformance. What I suggest, and then this action I would suggest sort of making fairly quickly, make an application to the approved body to undertake the certificate. Start that dialogue so that you can get in the queue, essentially. And as I said before, there's only 12 months for this work to be carried out, so it's not a very long period of time.
Can I just ask you a question on that?
Sure, can, Yvette.
Simon. Regarding the labelling, and one of the question I had come through, and I shouldn't be asking question in the middle of it, but
that's okay.
I'm happy because you're talking about the textile side, and it really is quite important. Samples, when they're having samples sent from one place to the other, do they have to be CE marked as well, or going back and forward? How does that work?
So you can only CE mark, and you can only apply a UKCA mark to a final product. So if you're taking the fabric and making it into a garment, and you're placing that garment on the market, yes, that has to be CE marked. If you are manufacturing and supplying the fabric that's used in the garment, no, you don't need the CE mark for that. However, the organisation who is buying the fabric will no doubt want to know that that meets the requirements that are laid down in any standard, and that would be very, very specific to any standard. So what we find is the fabric manufacturer will be very much focused on demonstrating the compliance to aspects of a standard, but they wouldn't be doing any of the CE marking. That's only done on the final product.
Thank you.
No problem. So again, my last point on here is communicate, because I think it's probably more important in this stage, because further down the chain, past the manufacturer, there'll be other people handling the product, and they will want to know what the plan is with the adoption of this UKCA mark. Next slide, please. Which brings me on to the further down the supply chain. So this is anybody supplying a garment that is not necessarily the manufacturer. Again, be aware of the UKCA mark and the milestones, because you'll need to consider that as you buy product. You'll need to know at what point you need to swap over to a UKCA mark product from being a CE mark, and really to determine whether you use extension certificates. So an extension certificate, I'll try and explain that. So a manufacturer might undertake the certification process themselves, and they would generate a certificate. But there are times when their customer, who takes the product from them, will want to have a CE mark certificate in their own name. And this is where we extend the original certificate. We don't do the full certification process. We extend that to a new organization further down the supply chain, so that they have the information in their name. So if you are in that situation where you are working with certificate extensions, you're going to need to think about the transfer of those. And that has to be transferred from the original certificate. So if your manufacturer, you need to wait for your manufacturer to do the new or gain the UKCA mark before you can gain an extension from this. And this is quite a common way of working, and a very legitimate way of working. And we find that potentially a product may have many extensions to new organizations. And then there could be tens of them off a single product, which might be very similar across their range. So those extensions are important. They need also to be UKCA marked. They can't be CE marked after the end of next year. So they can only be done when the main certificate has been done. And really to understand the plans of the supply chain. Because further down the route, you won't be able to buy product until it has been UKCA marked. So if your supplier is providing the garment fully certified to you, and you take it and you buy it already branded, and you don't have those certificates, you've really got to wait until those organisations have done their work before you can be confident that it's being done. So I think it's really ask the question as to if that organisation is getting in the queue. What are they planning to do? And I think also this type of organisation would need to be prepared to answer questions from the end users. I should imagine in the coming months there'll be a lot of talk about this certificate and the certification system, and I do find that supporting the end user does take a little bit of work, because the garment potentially won't change. There is potentially no difference, no drop in level of protection provided by the product that you are supplying. Although the end customer might think that if you've not adopted this new system, then therefore they cannot buy it. I tend to find there can be confusion at that point. So we do hope that this is through the industry we can explain this to all the end users, so they understand at what point they need to be looking for these new garments or these new labelled garments, at what point that they can be delivered. Next slide, please. So we've got a difficult year in front of us because everybody needs to transfer to the UKCA mark. And I use the phrase transfer because a lot of organisations who are working with a good notified body who's got their feet in both camps, it is a fairly straightforward process because the certification process has all been done correctly, and under the umbrella of the larger company. So if you've got your 2 feet, it's all done to the same quality, and then you can inherit that work, and an administrative task can be put into place to actually give the UKCA mark certificate. It is more difficult or a longer process if you are bringing product from one organisation to another. So if you've had your work, your products certified in Italy, for example, Italy, France, Germany, wherever you've had them certified, any organisation in the UK cannot assume that the work has been done 100% correctly and make that assumption as part of this process, because they're putting their name to a legal document. It has to be a full certification. We respect our colleagues on the continent who work in those organisations. We know they do a good job. When this decision or this process does not make a negative comment on the way they do their job, we just as a legal entity need to make that conduct a full certification to be able to put our name to it. So there is more work to be done then. Once or any new product entering the market and any product entering the market after the transition period should be fairly streamlined if you were working with a notified body in the UK who is able to deliver both systems. So you will be able to apply for both certificates, and within their organisation, they will organise among their 2 arms of their business to deliver both certificates. But the chances are you'll work with one individual representing that organisation who then will supply back that one document, or sorry, those 2 documents. Probably a good idea would be for one system to take a lead, because if you're trying to do 2 things at the same time, the chance, well, because they're a complete mirror, if you're making any changes or learning anything on the way, that's appropriate to both. So the way we're looking at this is if we run one system through, then the next system just becomes an administrative change. This approach for any organisation in the UK, or working with anybody in the UK in a notified body or an approved body, does make it more streamlined than if you work with 2 organisations. So if you use somebody in the continent, somebody in Europe to deliver your CE mark, you will pay a full certification cost. If you are then coming to the UK, again, you will pay a full certification cost. If you're to use a UK notified body with an arm in Europe, then they will no doubt, same as we are, put in place a system whereby which one is an administrative follow on from the other, both done to the same quality, both done to the same level, same level of delivery, but you will find that the cost is a lot more competitive. So I think there is a real benefit to working with a UK organisation past this point. Past the transition. We've got a challenge with the transition, I think, in the meantime, because not only are all the organisations that we traditionally work with, and all my other colleagues across other notified bodies, but there'll be organisations who have traditionally used organisations in Italy and Germany and France who will now need to consider this as well. So there will be a lot of people queuing up past our normal list of customers into people that we've not spoken to before. Okay, next slide. And that brings me to the end. So it's very much an overview of the system with, I'm afraid, still a few floating points because we still yet to receive some of that final information, but very much as true as I can make it today. But with a focus really on those different levels of the supply chain, because I think they are distinctly different in the sorts of things you need to be aware of and what you need to action.
Simon, thank you very much. That was a lot of information and quite complicated, I think. I'm glad I'm not doing that myself. However, in order for them to get information Simon, I'm going to be writing this up for the website anyway. But if people want the slides, or they can come to you, or they can go onto our website and get the slide, and we can link it back to yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. We've also got an article we've written as well, which that's freely available. So so by all means, and I'm sure when everybody's considered their position, they'll have questions about that, and then by all means are welcome to make contact.
One thing somebody also said to me was about the exhibitions, taking samples and thing to exhibition. Would that, it has to be the just repeat myself and what you said earlier, it has to be a finished garment. And if it's a finished garment, even if it's a sample, it has to have the correct marking on it as well. Yeah.
Not necessarily for a trade fair or an event.
Right.
So you what you do find is people do have preliminary products or proposed products, if you like. Other people will want to have the final certified garment, depending on who they're selling to. But they organise anybody buying it as it is placed on the market. It will need to be fully certified for the relevant system for the region in which it's sold into.
Mm-hmm. All right, excellent. I
Can I,
appreciate
sorry,
that.
Yvette, can I just jump in there very
Yeah,
briefly on the
please. I'm going to
samples?
introduce you now. This is Adam Mansell, CEO for the UKFT, and please jump right in there, Simon. Um, Adam, what is my name? I'm calling everybody something else today. I do apologise.
Don't worry, don't
Adam,
worry.
yes, go for it.
It's not specifically PPE and UKCA related, but you've asked a couple of questions about samples. I think it's very important that the audience understand that from the 1st of Jan next year, and probably even if there is a deal, don't forget that movement of any samples, be it to your customer, be it to, as you're developing product, or taking it to a trade show, you can only move those products using an ATA carnet. Using an ATA carnet will allow you to move trade samples free of tariffs and free of VAT. And if you don't have an ATA carnet, if you're going to whatever the show's called in Germany, ANA or whatever it's called.
ANA, yeah.
But if you don't have a carnet and you're taking your samples to ANA in Germany, you will get charged import tariffs as it hits the EU, plus import VAT from the EU, and then you'd get tariffs again, bringing it back into the UK. So an ATA carnet is a temporary export license, particularly for samples. There's a UKFT guidance on using ATA carnets, but everything, and I stress even with a deal, everything will need to go through an ATA carnet. Those companies that are already selling to the States and to Japan will know all about using ATA carnets. If you haven't, and if you've only been selling into the EU, you won't know anything about it. So it's incredibly important. I know it's not about UKCA and PPE, it's about everything to do with import and export.
And that is the question I've been posed to me several times before, and I really did not understand that. So ATA carnet, how are you spelling that? I'll come back to you.
So it is ATA,
Yeah,
which I can't remember what it stands for, and carnet, which is CARNET. I'll send you the UKFT guidance, Yvette, and you can circulate it.
We definitely need that, because I've had that question several times put to me, and I was still trying to get that from Simon, but I wasn't quite clear, because it's specifically for the exhibition that companies wanted to understand about the. So I think we need to have something clearly as part of the article we're going to be writing after this to explain that to them. So even if we take in, it doesn't matter if I'm taking the magazine or anybody else is taking anything, we have to have this to go. It's like exporting, right? Is that it?
Yeah, it will cover all sorts of things. So if you're going to a trade show and you're taking your samples, you'll probably also have to list your laptop on the ATA carnet. But rather than take over this presentation to talk about carnets, let me send you the guidance. and then you can circulate that to the PCIW membership. But these are two separate points. So Simon has said quite clearly that if you're taking a sample to a trade show, it doesn't have to have a CE/CA mark on it. Once you place it on the market, as in once you're fulfilling a contract, I guess is the simplest way of putting it, then the product does have to have a CE or a CA mark. But a trade show sample doesn't.
Right. Okay.
But you will need to have an ATA carnet to take that product to a trade show.
Right.
Clear as mud.
Okay. Clear. Absolutely. Okay. Let me just have a look.
Sorry, Yvette, while you're just looking at the questions on screen, just one other point for the audience on a slightly broader labelling issue is that there are some other changes to labelling post the end of the transition period with regard to garments in general. There won't be any change to fibre content legislation, but you'll still have to carry on labelling your product in all of the different languages of the countries that you're selling into. There won't be any change to garment care instructions, but where there will be a change, and this is quite a significant change, is you will have to put on your garments, if you're selling them into the EU, the name and address of the supplier of that garment, but that name and address has to be of an EU-based organisation. So currently, if you're selling into Germany or France or Italy, you are supposed to put the name and address of a UK company as the supplier. But because we'll no longer be a member of the EU, you have to have an EU registered address on garments that you're placing on the market in the EU from the 1st of Jan next year. And the flip of that is that when you're importing products into the UK, you'll have to have a UK registered address on the label of your garment as well. Now, in very much the same way that there is a, I'm going to use the word transition period, but that gets confusing. There's a delay in the fact that you don't have to have a permanent CE/CA mark on your garments for another 12 months, whatever it is, Simon. Equally, with having the label with a UK registered address for imports into the UK, that can be on a swing tag or on import documentation for the next 6 months. But from July 2021, that'll have to be permanently on the garment. The additional complication with that is that if you are importing products that might be made somewhere else in the world and you're having to put a UK registered importer address on it, so I'll use a retail example. If you're making your shirts in Cambodia and you're selling them through Marks and Spencer's, and Marks and Spencer's put Marks and Spencer's London on there, there is then an extra labelling requirement around country of origin, because you've put Marks and Spencer's London, UK. You could mislead the person who's buying that shirt or the PPE as to where that product was made, and therefore you would have to have an extra country of origin label in there as well. Again, without wanting to turn this into a labelling seminar, Brexit labelling seminar, the UKFT Brexit guidance document, which was issued a couple of weeks ago, covers all of this in detail, and it's freely available on our website. So all of that information is in there. Do go onto the UKFT website, ukft.org, and there's a free document about all of these changes. But I think it's important, as we're talking about labelling for CA and CE marking, I thought it was just important to expand it slightly, because those requirements will also impact on PPE.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and trying to address both of them, if you pull those two needs together, it'll be better than trying to do one and then do the other, because they're separated, but both apply.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think the question that I'm looking at here, it just says, will all this still apply if we had a trade deal, or would it change again? But I think you answered that question earlier, didn't you?
Well, if I have a go at answering that, and there has to be an element of this is my best guess. This isn't. None of us can give you a concrete answer on that particular question. As Yvette will know, I'm very heavily involved with the UK government departments that are dealing with some of the Brexit negotiations. My very strong feeling is that if we have a trade deal, it will be predominantly on tariffs only. I don't think that all of this sort of stuff, so whether it's the CECA marking, whether it's the change in the REACH regulations, which have a very similar approach to the CECA marking in so much as they're going to be a mirror regulations, but you'll have a UK body and an EU body. I don't think any of that will be included in the trade deal. I think you have to prepare as a company to do all of the things that Simon has talked about and more for other areas. And the only thing a trade deal will probably deliver, if it delivers anything, is around tariff-free access. But again, without wishing to turn this into a Brexit seminar, be very, very aware that if there is a trade deal and that is around tariff-free access, the tariff-free access will only apply to goods made in the UK or goods made in Europe. So if you are a large supplier of PPE that is bringing in manufactured product, let's say from China, into the UK and then selling it on to the EU, even with a free trade deal, there will be tariffs payable on that product, because in effect, that will then be two series of imports, exports. It's only a tariff-free deal with the EU will only apply to product that is made in the UK or made in the EU.
Thank you.
I would echo Adam's comments there. I mean, at SATRA, we're treating the whole introduction as the UKCA mark as coming into force, and we're working towards that eventuality and advising our customers to do the same. I think it's highly unlikely that as Adam said, any deal would cover this or change where we are now.
Okay, so it stands. Anyone else have any more questions at all that they want to put forward?
What are the consequences if a business isn't prepared properly when it comes to the point that they're trying to sell their products on PPE products on the market?
That's a good question, because what we found is when products aren't correctly certified, then they find it very difficult bringing them into the country if they've got to come through customs in any way. We find people working for the customs a very keen eye and will know what they're looking for. So there's numerous times when I know that products have been stopped entering a country. If the products are made in country, then it's the agencies policing the industry really that will pick this up, and sort of trading standards are active in a number of areas with respect to PPE. Recently, they've been particularly active, and I know this is probably slightly away from what a lot of the PCIAW members are involved with, but cricket protectors is something that trading standards have been really hot on just recently, and have been sort of addressing all the companies that are selling them without certification. So I think that's the sort of thing that might where it would be picked up.
And a little bit towards the start of your presentation, you mentioned that approved bodies will turn into notified bodies, or notified bodies turn into approved bodies.
That's right, yes.
Is that a instant transition, or does it have to be requested? What happens there?
No, you're right. It's instant. So we've received, we're in the process of receiving a letter from the government that gives us instruction to say that we have automatically gone from a notified body to an approved body, because we are already certified to those systems, and the same is true of our those other organisations. When we are next accredited, we will be accredited against that new system. Rather than the old one, so we'll need to show that we've transferred everything over, which has been what we've been busy with recently. But yeah, that's the way it would work.
Okay, and just to clarify, it was the government that initiated that process rather than SATRA as a business.
Indeed, yes. All the government initiated that, and all the bodies received that, are in the process of receiving those letters. I think at the stage we're at the moment is we've had a letter to say we're getting a letter. I think is where we are.
Okay. Do you want to read out that question there, so about the UK there, Declan?
Yeah, sure. So what mark is required for goods going into the rest of the world?
Well, that would very much depend on where they're going. Different places in the world have different systems. The US has a lot of standards, although it doesn't have a certification system. Australia, New Zealand operates a system. So much of SATRA's work is Europe focused with action in the US. We don't get too involved with other areas, but it's really whatever was relevant to that area prior to Brexit and the introduction of this would remain the same. You do find that some regions do look to the CE mark for guidance, and some regions do accept a CE marked product. But was it intended for Europe as been sold to this region? So I should imagine that would continue.
Okay. We've just had another question come in here. So does Northern Ireland have a big advantage now over Great Britain, over a Great Britain company, in that we can sell a CE product into GB with no extra costs of a UKCA mark, only relying on the CE mark? Does this apply even after Jan 2033?
I must confess, the information I have about Northern Ireland is very, very scant at the moment, and that really was only pulled out as separate to in the last set of guidance. I guess there are some benefits, but the way I've been thinking about it is if an organisation go for a CE mark and a UKCA mark, and it's all done at the same time, then the additional cost is extremely minimal. It is an administrative task and not a certification task. So there will be a very competitive cost attached to that. So if you have a UKCA mark and a CE mark, then that will cover all bodies. It will cover both Europe and the UK, GB and Northern Ireland. So it's both territories. So I think that's the way I've been thinking about it. Yes.
Isn't it, Simon? Isn't there going to be a UKNI mark as well for Northern Ireland?
Yes, and that's what's been proposed, but we've not seen any information about that at all. But because the CE mark would be accepted in Northern Ireland from the guidance that we've been given, then I would have thought that the CE mark would be what most customers would want to go for, because it opens up more than one territory. If you were only getting the Northern Ireland mark, you would not be able to sell it into the GB. You would not be able to sell it into Europe. So to me, it would no doubt carry the same cost as a CE mark, but would open up such a small territory. I would have thought the CE mark would be more attractive, and that's working on based on the assumption from the guidelines that were given previously that the CE mark will continue to be accepted in Northern Ireland.
There's another question here. So if we, as a UK company, buy in China, we pay duty in the UK. If we then sell to the EU, we pay duty again to the EU. So actually paying twice?
Simple answer to that question is yes. Even with a trade deal, as I say, it's very likely the trade deal will only apply to products made in either the EU or the UK. So in that particular circumstance, you would be importing, let's talk about career and workwear. You'd be importing a suit, let's say, for a bank. The tariff rate coming into the UK from China will be 12%. And then the tariff rate going from the UK into the EU will also be 12%. So you could be paying 24%. On that particular garment. The only way around that will be to export directly from China to the EU. So either using a third-party logistics warehouse or setting up your own EU registered office. That's the only way you can avoid paying double duty from the 1st of Jan. Next.
So, in the long run,
I was just about to.
Sorry, John. Sorry.
No, I was just about to say Adam answered the question for me. That's absolutely true. Adam, maybe the people that are listening would benefit just a little bit of information and understanding about applying or having very good logistics partners that allows you to flex and control what goes where, because if they're actually running bonded warehouses, then the goods are arriving into the UK or Europe, and actually I don't know which, but historically, then you can move it around and then you only pay the duty once. So maybe you could just highlight a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important to make sure that you have a very, very agile logistics partner if you are using partners. I mean, John's absolutely right. A bonded warehouse would allow you to avoid the wrong word. You wouldn't have to pay duty until it hit the final market. The problem is that virtually every single bonded warehouse between here and Bratislava is completely full, and there is no space because every single industry is facing the same problems. So you need to think very carefully and pretty quickly around your supply chains. And if you are selling into the EU with product that is made not in the UK or the EU, then I would advise you to ship that product directly to the EU, even if it means you have to have split shipments. So you do most of your shipments straight to the EU and some into the UK. It'll be cheaper to pay for the split shipments than it will be to pay for the double duty.
There you go. Absolutely.
So we have had another one. I think it's a little another question. It seems to be a follow-up on the response from the Northern Ireland bit, and I understand that not all the details out there yet. However, it might be something that you can provide clarification with. So is it not correct, though, that under the unfettered access Northern Ireland companies can just run with a product already CE marked and just continue with that for selling into GB or the Republic of Ireland? So therefore, it is a lower cost and a hassle to operate from Northern Ireland.
Well, from what I understand, and so as you rightly say, that there's still information to come out to us. They will continue to do that for the time being, but the CE mark will not be recognised in the UK past the end of next year. So it would need to be, my understanding, needs to be CE marked, sorry, UKCA marked from the end of next year.
Mm-hmm. So they will have a level playing field, but in reverse in
yes,
situations,
yes.
essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, again towards the start, about there might be a change of position in the supply chains based on if you were a previous notified body or approved body. It sounded to me like it might just be a kind of terminology change as opposed to kind of an organisational structure.
Oh, absolutely, yes, yes. So it's really, but when you look at the PPE regulation, there is definitions of responsibilities of where you are in that supply chain, and there's a change of definition where you might have been a supplier, but now you may well be an importer. So it's worth just re-looking at your you know, what's expected of you as an organisation. I don't think it changes very much, but it's just worth noting that.
Fair enough. Thank you. And do you think so obviously we've spoken a bit about how there's a transition period, or a period in which there's a bit of extra leeway in terms of making the change from the CE mark to the UKCA, and obviously there's a lot of British businesses that have to do that, but on the flip side there's some European businesses that will need to do the same in reverse. Do you think the time allocated is sufficient?
Big deep draw of breath. Trying the hardest to be set up to be able to deliver that, but it's a very tall order, I'll have to say. Because if you think, if only so imagine that we've all been working for 3 solid years on the UK on the CE mark, and even if 80% of those were sold into the UK, still a lot to deliver. Many of those will be administrative tasks, but there are standards that have changed. So that state of the art consideration is a challenge in itself. So not only we've got to deliver the certification element of it. Prior to that, if standards have changed, there will need to be testing. So that cannot begin on January the 1st. So we and other organisations I talk to are trying their hardest to set themselves up. We are acquiring staff. We've got a particularly big team anyway, but it is a real challenge. I would have liked to have seen a longer period of time.
Does the way it's kind of set up provide opportunity to extend that kind of time frame if it's required, or is it a very shut off date?
The industry itself has been lobbying for quite some time to extend that. I think we all found the move from the old PPE directive to the PPE regulation was a real challenge over a 2-year period. So a year is quite difficult. I would like to think there would be a change in that guidance. I can't. Something I imagine we sort of hope for, because we think the year is a difficult period, but we'll just have to see whether the industry's lobbying has had an effect.
Okay. And do you think, from like dealing with the companies you have been so far, do you think it's a challenge that a lot of them are taking on with their attention maybe divided with the pandemic?
Oh, very much so. Yes, very much so. I mean, I've for the last month, I've had many direct communications and video calls with our significant customers who are usually really, really big suppliers, manufacturers, and they appreciate the challenge that they're facing, but they're still dealing with the aftermath of of the pandemic. We're still in the pandemic, while they have managed to address a lot of the challenges that were evident in the first few months. Things are a little easier for operation, but the challenges are still there. So that's completely true.
We have 2 more questions there, Declan.
We do. So this one's from a company. They say they're a garment manufacturer. They say, do we need to get UKCA tests certs from our fabric suppliers for our technical files?
Well, that will very much depend on whether the standards have changed. So if the devil's in the detail here, I'm afraid, and what you would need to do is go back to the technical files, look at the standards at which your original testing was done against, and verify through your own research or through your notified body to work out whether those standards have been updated. So standards that are published, and there is a commitment for them to be reviewed every 5 years. It's a little bit of a loose 5 years because it can sort of extend. The review doesn't necessarily mean that there will be changes, because a review could determine that the standard is corrected as it is, and nothing is needed at this point in time, and then it could be reconfirmed. So there's not to say that every 5 years a standard will change, but there has been a lot of activity across all standards bodies. So if during the period since your certificate was issued and today, if there is any standard changes, then they will need to be adopted. When there is a standard change, it's rare for a standard change to be completely revolutionized. You tend to find there's some areas of development. So all really depends on what's being tested.
Okay.
So another manufacturer, and it's of technical clothing and also an importer of PPE. This person has been led to believe that there is a requirement for companies who manufacture and/or import products to appoint and name a responsible person within the organisation to oversee the certification. Is this correct? And if so, what are the requirements of that individual?
That's something I'm probably going to need to check on. I would need to probably go back to the guidelines. They've got the guidance on that. So my apologies for not being able to answer that now. But if you want to pass that on to me, I will follow up and see if I can provide an answer.
Sure, we'll follow up and send you that and see if we can supply it to that person.
Adam, do you want to add anything to that?
No, again, I don't know the answer to that one either.
Okay, all right then. Well, we'll come back to you with that answer then from Simon. So there's another one above there, Declan.
There is, yeah. So this one is back to the double duty topic. So with the double duty of a UK company who imports from China and sells to the EU, does this mean that the business model is no longer viable? There are many companies who operate like this, and so they should probably get a bit of a warning about the end users who have EU staff. So they want some clarification on that, please.
I've literally just, as I read that question, I've emailed to Yvette UKFT's latest Brexit guidance, which covers this and the labelling issues and all sorts of other things as well in the process relief, a whole series of things that companies need to be ready for. So Yvette has now got that.
Okay.
So please do share that with the membership, Yvette.
Yes, we'll do.
Will do.
Yeah, we'll do. All right then. Oh, lovely. So any other questions? Any listeners out there, participants who have any more questions at all? Fire it up. If not, guys, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Simon, Adam, as always, I'm always inviting you to these wonderful things, Adam. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. I will be publishing all this on the on our newsletter, on our website, and sending it out in our magazines as well. So anyone have any more questions, please don't hesitate to come back to us or directly to Simon. So we're going to sign off now, and thank you all very much for your support. Tune in tomorrow to the next webinar. John, would you like to say something before we go?
Well, goodbye. No, terrific. Again, super interesting, super important. A lot of very good information, very clearly enunciated, very clearly delivered. So thank you to Simon and Adam for helping us with that. And rest assured, wherever you come from, wherever you're doing, then understand that there's people out there that can help. And if you come to us and we don't know the answer, then we'll find out and we'll let you know. That's our commitment to you. So thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thank you very much. Simon,
Bye.
Adam, thank you.